Diarmuid, obviously All-Ireland final weekend coming up. The two semi-finals, it's probably safe to say that Donegal had a much easier passage than they may have liked or that we probably all envisaged. Do you think that in terms of what Kerry had to face and how Donegal ran out easy winners, do you think does that have any bearing in what happens this weekend, probably mentally more than anything else?
Yeah, and even physically, I think for Donegal, because like this is their 11th game this year in the championship, which is kind of unheard of. When we were going through, it was 3 in Leinster, 3 in the All-Ireland, so the 6 games, nearly double the games they're playing, and they were week on week there for a long time. I know McGuinness came out and he was saying about having to travel to different venues and how much it took out of the squad. But I think, yeah, they had a great performance against Meath, and obviously it was a day before Kerry had to play, which means they gave them a little bit more recovery time. But also it wasn't, they could take off Michael Murphy, they could take off a couple of the big players coming down the stretch to give them a little bit more, rest time, and hopefully they wouldn't be going into the week of recovery with any knocks or niggles or anything like that. So I think that could have a bearing on how, especially the older guys in the group, like McHugh came off early, Murphy came off early, and to get them into recovery mode straight away would be huge coming into this week, where they can actually get a bit of training and a bit of physical stuff done. On the Kerry side, it was more to get minutes into some key players, like Paddy Clifford coming back was a huge thing for them, and he played very, very well in them games, made a huge impact. So I think there is a little bit of a contrast. Donegal could rest a few guys, but also Kerry could see what they had. I think the two midfielders had a great game. That's going to be the melting pot, I think, in this final. Who can win that middle third and who can really solidify it there and get ball in early. But for me, I'm still sweet on Donegal. I think their squad depth is huge. I think McGuinness factor is a massive part in this, and I'm just hoping for a great final now.
So as someone who played in plenty of All-Ireland finals and obviously went in quite often with a big semi-final win, is Jimmy McGuinness the right person to be over Donegal in terms of going in this weekend? Because I think if we just look back last weekend, did Cork's hurling semi-final do them any favours going into a final compared to Tipperary? Do you think an awful lot of that, from your own personal experience, comes down to the players, or does it come down to, do you need it to come down to management as well, in terms of just grounding players and keeping them focused on ultimately what still is the biggest challenge that's ahead of them?
Yeah, I think McGuinness has been around the block. Their senior guys have been around the block a good while. I don't think complacency is going to be the factor in this final. In fact, I think it's going to be performance, and I suppose that's where fans and players and everything, I think whoever performs to their best will win this game. Yeah, and I suppose then from a Kerry point of view, you couldn't say complacency. They have to have the hunger. They've won with this great team. They've won one All-Ireland, and we've been talking them up the last decade nearly, or last 10 years I suppose nearly. So I think they'll have the hunger to go and do that. Murphy obviously came back this year for Donegal, so you'd imagine the hunger will be within that camp. And I just don't see a team being complacent. Two of the best teams in the country at the moment, two of the most high-scoring teams. We've seen the score that Kerry put up against Armagh in the quarter-final, and we also seen the score that Donegal put up against Meath. And if we can get that sort of a game, that will be magic for everybody. It's a complete turnaround on what we've seen in previous years. The new rules have made this such an exciting final, really, for me and for all the fans. Who are the big performers in both of these teams, and who will probably be up here after next Sunday? Who will be the two men from either side will be maybe player of the year and maybe have a bigger influence in the final? Usually player of the year is the best performer in the final anyway, or the semi and the final. So I know you've obviously got Cliffords, you got Murphy, Michael Langan, whoever on the Donegal side. Even Sean Patton is in the mix there, I believe. But who do you see being player of the year this year in football?
Well, I suppose David is the standout one whenever it comes to Kerry. Just what he's done, obviously, since he came up to senior ranks. He's continued on his underage form, there's no doubt about that. And I honestly believe he's took... Well, I think the new rules have helped. But I think just physically, mentally, he's took his game to a whole new level this year. So obviously, if Kerry get across the lane at the weekend, I think he's an absolute shoe-in for it. The Donegal team, obviously, there's a huge amount of talk about Michael coming back, and again the physical addition that he came back in, and just how seamless it has been from him. There always was that bit of a risk, you know, where you've took time out and you're trying to come back. Is the body going to be fit for it, particularly with the new rules? And it was difficult for everyone to adapt it, never mind someone who's been out for a number of years, but he has done. It's been amazing to come back from him. But for me, I think if Donegal get across the line this weekend and he has even a decent performance, I probably would tip maybe Michael Langan from Donegal to be their front runner for Footballer of the Year. I think he's just been incredible. Like, both teams are heading in full in the knowledge that what you're being coached and what's been drilled into you is coming from men who've been there and done that at the highest level. Like, Jack's coaching days go right back to being involved with Paddy O'Shea in the late 90s, to him taking over as manager for the first time in 2004. Every time he's been involved in Kerry, all Ireland titles have come back home. He's looking to come back with a 5th this weekend. And then obviously Jimmy, what he has done with Donegal, taking them from nowhere in 2011 to All Ireland champions in 12, another final in 14, and back to another All Ireland final. It's safe to say his legacy is well cemented, and it's incredible. So again, if just your own personal experience heading into big weekends like this here, into the biggest games, I'm sure that has to be reassuring as a player, to knowing that there's that confidence within the group, that you have figureheads like that there who are overseeing, who are plotting and planning, and probably knowing yourself that anything that has to be taken care of will be.
Yeah, well, you know, from your own point of view, you're in the managerial sphere. It's the preparation leading up to the games, the preparation in your pre-season. It's the preparation, how you prepare for different games. It's not like once they go out onto that pitch, there's no shouting and roaring from the sideline. But also for me, I think both of these camps, you don't hear a lot coming out of them. Yeah. You know, it's pure silence. A few of the Kerry lads asked for the fans to come out and support them. That'll tell you a little bit of how they're feeling, you know, leading into them games. That's a sort of a confidence thing. And we've seen the reaction we got from the players after that. Like, we've seen the performance against Armagh, we've seen the performance against Tyrone the last day, albeit they let Tyrone come back a little bit towards the end. But look, Jack, his career, you know, it speaks for itself. He's been around, you know, 4 or 5 different groups in Kerry, and every single time got the bit of tin to come home with. So and McGuinness, you know, similar. He changed Donegal football in a sense, I suppose, from 2010 to maybe 2014, and obviously they won it in 12. But to come back now and bring a squad of guys who he'd know probably the nucleus of it, but to bring what's come, like the likes of the, you know, we spoke about Finbar Rorty, you know, the 2 O'Donnells, these lads coming through, like, and they all seem to just row in. Whatever he asked them to do, they just seem to be able to do that without any, because it is kind of hard. Like, McBrearty sitting on the bench there, probably believing he should be starting. Yeah. A bit like what we had with Kev Mack, but sometimes you need guys like that to come in with a bit between their teeth. And I think McGuinness is so good at getting lads, you know, right. He done it with Gallen in the Ulster Championship. He left him off a game, and when he came back, he was electric. So it's a little bit of a mental challenge, I suppose, because you have such a big squad. How do you get them all right on for one particular day? But I think McGuinness just has that bit of magic, you know. And it's very hard to put your finger on what it is, but it's the squad. It's like what the Derry manager done a couple of years ago. It feels like they're all together, you know, and that's what you want from a managerial team. Yeah,
and to me, like, it does come from how you plot and plan your whole entire season, but it's the energy that the manager still needs to front up, because the buck falls with the man who's at the top. And to me, there's a driven nature in both of those men in terms of there's just always been a success. But that's not by chance. Absolutely, they have good players, and they always have that talent surrounding them. But there's plenty of managers who've had quality players around them and have been able to get the best out of them. So yeah, it's for me how they energise themselves, and then that rubs off on their team. That has been, it's always been impressive from these 2 men in particular. And I think you're right. Like, whenever Jimmy first came in, Donegal were at such a low ebb. His big thing was getting the players believing, but bringing the support with them. And there was in some cases there was a wee bit of criticism in terms of what David Clifford coming out in that rallying cry before the Armagh game. But to me, right, Kerry fans, they just have never traditionally travelled to games. But I have never seen Kerry support get behind the team like they have against Armagh and they have against Tyrone. So they have a massive part to play in it. And why wouldn't he ask them to come out and get involved? Because just what I've seen and what I've heard from them coming from the stands onto the field, I think it's something that those Kerry players were probably looking on in envy with other counties in terms of that vocal support that was coming with them. So ultimately, you're playing this game. It's obviously you're playing because you want to win yourself and you're giving up your time and that there. But there's a collective, there's always a bigger thing of why you're playing. And for me, that's been a key aspect of both of these management teams, and whether it was the management team or David himself that did that there, is getting everyone involved, making it feel like this is your team, your identity. And again, that's another thing I'm looking forward to the weekend. It's just it's the atmosphere, and obviously All-Ireland final day is huge, but it's just that there buzz that comes with both of these counties in terms of being part of the biggest day, the biggest spectacle. And both teams, the way they play, they're a reflection of their management, but they're a reflection of the county that they're representing. So I think again, it's another part of why we're all looking forward to Sunday evening. Diarmuid, obviously then if we have a look at Kerry themselves, and Kerry's Kerry. There's always that expectation that is there with them, but in some cases they were dismissed slightly all year. Now whether that was because they weren't playing that Division 1 opposition in Championship, do you feel that has been the case, or did you feel all along that they had the capability of getting things right and clicking once it came to Croke Park? What's your thoughts on their Championship season as a whole?
Yeah, I suppose with Kerry, it was a little bit of inconsistency in the league. You know, they were beaten at home a good few times this year, and that's not usually what you see from Kerry. They struggled a little bit in the league. When they came to the Championship, they got the job. Like, they won the league this year. Let's just remember that as well. Like, but they were beaten at home a couple of times, and the league was so funny the way it kind of panned out. They won it right on the last day but they could have been relegated at the same time. So it was one of those kind of funny ones. But they've won the Munster Championship. They won the Division 1 league this year. They're in an All-Ireland final. So that's, from a managerial, from a playing point of view, that's all you can ask. You know, it's all about results really at the end of the day. And maybe it was the public in Kerry that weren't giving them, like, they have probably the best forward for the last, 2 decades playing, and his brother the same. He could probably be in the same realm, I suppose. They have the players to do it. There was a load of injuries. They were beaten by Meath on the road, you know, and there was just that inconsistency with Kerry this year. But they've got, when they had to get results, they got the results. And that's, I suppose, that's testament to the squad depth that they have. We've seen it the last day, the two lads that came in the middle of the field were absolutely immense. I think that's, like, for this Sunday, I think that battle's going to be huge. Can they get up to that again? Will that give them more confidence? But yeah, you're right. Kerry are kind of being dismissed by the media and by the fans, but I doubt in their squad. They believe, and always have believed, that they can go on and, you know, win back-to-back All-Irelands. They can go on and win 5 in a row. They have that inside confidence, I think, in the Kerry squad. You always do down there. But from my point of view, I wasn't writing them off. I know what they can do in a spell of play. We've seen what happened against Armagh here. It's like a 16-point turnaround or run, like, on a team, and that's the sort of firepower that they have. So yeah, inconsistency maybe during the league a little bit, but they're starting to put back-to-back performances together, and that's what you want. You want consistency in your performances. We've seen it right way through the Championship now. So
they're probably just held to different standards, and that's just part of the territory in terms of the history that comes with Kerry football. And they didn't have Division 1 opposition to play. They don't mix the fixtures. Exactly. Like you said, they were ready whenever it did come. But in terms of the injuries, like, I think they've managed that exceptionally well all year. They've been down key personnel, but it just seems like it was next man up. It didn't seem like there was any panic with them. And then obviously they look like they have a few more key men coming back this weekend in terms of, you'd be expecting to see Paul Geaney. There's talk of Diarmuid O'Connor also coming back this weekend. You have Tony Brosnan, Killian Spillane. They have plenty of big hitters. You have your experience and the likes of your Teg Morley, potentially Tom O'Sullivan coming back in terms of defensive options. So in terms of dealing with the injuries, and yet it not taken away from the collective performances of their team. Is that something that probably has really impressed you, even once, well, particularly since they hit Croke Park?
Yeah, well, that grows confidence then. Do you know, like if you get big injuries, it happened to us before where we got big injuries with, say, Jack McCaffrey or Paul Mannion or someone, they're gone out of the game. And it's next man up. It has to be that in your squad. Like, you have to be able to believe in your squad. And I think Jack, you know, he gave them two lads a run 2 weekends ago at midfield, and they didn't put a foot wrong, like, you know, and they were up against two seasoned midfielders in Conn Kilpatrick and Kilmurray. So, like, to me, that just breeds confidence. You know, if you have 3 or 4 injuries and you lose, people start blaming, oh, it's the injuries, oh, it's the injuries. But when you have 3 or 4 injuries and you start getting performances, and then these guys are coming back looking for a jersey, then you have massive competition in the squad, and that only breeds confidence for me. And I think they've managed it very, very well. In fact, you know, they kind of blamed the injuries when they weren't performing well, which is fine to do, I suppose, in the media. And Dublin done the same earlier on in the year. But when it really mattered, these guys stood up and they put in the performance. So you're going to have the guys that you've just said come back, O'Connor, you know, Breen, these lads, they're all chomping at the bit to get a jersey for next Sunday. And I don't think that team is picked either. I think there's a couple of positions, especially in that back line, where you know, there could be like Morley to come in to maybe do a man marking role on one of the O'Donnells maybe, or something like that. I think that could be a big option for this Kerry squad. But yeah, I think that just breeds confidence. You know, being able to do that just breeds confidence in squads.
Obviously, once you make it to All Ireland final day, Diarmuid, it is all about winning at that stage. Winning's the only currency that has always been in Kerry. They won in 2014. They've been in plenty of finals since, but only got across the line once. Do you think, that's something that could burden this team, or do you think it's something that, because it's Kerry, that they're, as a county and a team, that they're well capable of embracing?
Yeah, I think the latter, I suppose. Like, Kerry comes with this aura or this confidence. They've won the most Sam Maguires ever, and it's sort of second nature that they win every couple of years, sort of thing down there. And it's a little bit different. You know, the last decade they've only got one, and people, I suppose, down in Kerry on the ground see the great minor team that came through, that great 20s squad that came through, and they're not seeing the fruits at the top level, at senior level. So that sometimes can be a burden when you're listening to it all the time, and it can maybe seep in a little bit. But for me, I don't think these guys have that mindset. I think they're cocky enough and arrogant enough to go out and just say, this played on its merits, one game, and if they do win this game, they've won 2 in the last decade, and they're the All-Ireland champions, and the target's on their back then. And I honestly think if Kerry can beat Donegal this year, they could go on and win 2 or 3 with the personnel they have, the leaders that they have in that team. But on the flip side then is, if Kerry lose, Jack O'Connor steps away, maybe a retiree or 2, Kerry are on a rebuild again, and that's the nature of this sport. It can change very, very quickly. A win can bring you on, but also a loss can make you, look to see where you can maybe rebuild or whatever. So that's a sort of a vague answer, but that's kind of where I think Kerry are at the moment. It would be disappointed had they only won All-Ireland with this group of players. Absolutely it would be. But if they win on Sunday, they could go on and win 5 or 6, and then, that's history. Is it destiny for Donegal to win this All-Ireland with I suppose, with Jim McGuinness coming back to where Donegal were, for him to come in, say, mid-season, and do what he's done, put together that squad, that real steeliness about them again, bringing Murphy back? Is it written in the stars for these guys to win this All-Ireland, or where do you think this squad could go if they win this All-Ireland?
I suppose, like you're briefly speaking about Kerry, I wouldn't turn around and say that I think they can dominate All-Irelands for 3 or 4 years. I think just maybe we've seen, history has proved that just the buy-in and the collective effort that it takes, particularly if you're Donegal and how far away they are in terms of just players commuting. So many players that are based different areas for work, whether that's as far down as Dublin or not. It is very hard to keep that sustained effort over, we're talking 4 or 5 year period. But I think this group, they're just looking about the here and now. I think, wouldn't it be unbelievable for them if Jimmy comes back, wins another All-Ireland, Michael comes out of retirement and wins an All-Ireland? That's that's the stuff of dreams for them in Donegal. And to be fair, like once like this team were in a bit of disarray. This group were 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, did their own managerial issues at that stage. That some players who had stepped away. But I think as soon as Jimmy came back, like there was never a question that the best players in Donegal were all going to be playing, we're all going to be available, and we're all going to be running the one way. That's just the aura that he has. It's what he demands, it's what he expects, and it's what he gets all the time. Last year they were very close. They felt themselves that I think they just maybe ran out a bit of a gas against Galway. But yeah, for him to turn around, to get Michael Murphy back, to get him at the level that he's at. But I think you still have to give credit to the rest of the group. I think so many of the players have taken their game to a whole new level. And particularly, like Peter Mogan, brilliant year last year, deservedly all-star. But I'm thinking Finbar Roerty in terms of a young player coming in. But I'm also thinking Brendan McCole, a player who had a very difficult start to inter-county career, to now go on to being the best man marker in Ireland at the moment, getting all the big jobs and just having that sole focus that this is my role. But knowing it's all right having that role. A couple of years ago it was maybe a bit easier because you knew, well, if I'm beaten, there's someone else going to cover me. We're in the modern game now, and the way teams can manipulate situations and get you in a one-on-one, you need to study every move. What way does this guy want to step me? Does he have a dummy solo? Does he want to take it off right first and then take it back on his left? All of those wee small things, he has them studied to the last. So defensively, they've been excellent. Those two boys in particular have really stood out for me. But the running power, the conditioning, it's another 12 months on from what Jimmy would have been trying to embed in them. Like they're inter-county players, they all operate at a very high level. Jimmy's level just seems to be that other step up. And I think just the physical physique, the physical running power, to deal with the calendar that you spoke about. They're going into their 11th game and looking for their 10th win out of 11 games, and that's championship football. Like that's incredible. Like without being, like that's 2 All-Irelands for you in terms of this is what these boys have been asked to do in one season. But it is what it is. That's what the new game is. That's what the prep. That whenever Jimmy's starting last October, November, it's with that in mind in terms of prepping their bodies to be fit to endure the season. And for me, that's what's been incredible about them. The pace, the energy, the support play, everything that they brought to the last day. And then wasn't it 11, 12 different scorers as well. On top of that, like such an array of options and talent who can punish you once they get into those situations. So they're certainly well placed. They've been well talked up before the season even started. And I think in terms of any county going into an All-Ireland final coming up against Kerry, I don't think an inferiority complex or a fear of a challenge, it's not going to bother this Donegal group. If anything else, I think it'll excite them and have them embrace it even more.
Yeah, so just a little bit on Michael Murphy and, you know, his leadership. He's been playing for Donegal for, it seems like, forever. But his performances, he's Donegal's top scorer this year, which is phenomenal. But like, if they win the All-Ireland, is this the fairy tale ending for him, or do you reckon he'll go another season? And you know, I know. Look, you can't say the guy's probably the best Donegal footballer that ever did play for Donegal. So he's always going to go down in history for that. Even when he was playing the international rules, he was a real leader on that team too. And but what would it feel like, I suppose, if he got this fairy tale ending for himself?
You would have to say if you park getting inside Michael's head, because he'll not worry about next year at the moment, but physically he certainly looks like he has the capability to go again. It's if it goes according to his plan this weekend and they win, it's very rare that you get to go out, you know, on a high at the top. Benny Tierney did it for Armagh back in 2002. Peter Canavan did it for Tyrone in 2005. They go out at the very top. Like, he didn't need to come back to cement his legacy as, you know, someone who in 100 years in Donegal they're going to be talking about Michael Murphy. That wasn't needed. I think if he was to go and win Sam Maguire for a second time, given where he's come from after the
statues everywhere.
Well, he'd be fully entitled to a statue at this stage, and that wouldn't just be in Glenswilly. That could be wherever you want to put it in Donegal. I think it would be an incredible legacy for him to leave. But my mind wouldn't be made up on it. I'd need to see what way this weekend plays out, because like I said, it's the physique of the man and it's the shape he's got himself into, and like he would be well capable, even if Donegal did win the All-Ireland, of enjoying everything that comes with that, but not losing his focus in terms of, right, I know what I need to do next year to get my body in shape again, to be capable of going again. But if you ask me my gut feeling now, if Donegal wins Sam, I think Michael would potentially go out at the top and leave it at that there. There always would be that draw that if you won, could we go again, could we win again? But it's a tough ask, and particularly in the modern game, the way it is, like your great Dublin team, I just don't see anyone doing 2, 3 in a row. Just not the way the landscape is at the moment, where there's just so many teams in a top 8 there who are capable of taking anybody out once it hits quarter-final stage here. I think we've seen it this year, and I think we're going to continue to see it for the next decade or so, and that's great for our games, but we'll let Michael mull that one over. Yeah. In terms of Donegal, Diarmuid, they have shown a mix and match of how they can play the game. Whenever they want to control it and slow it down, they're the best in the country at flooding the inside line, playing that keep ball around the half-forward line midfield and looking for strike runners. And then they have shown in the past in All-Ireland finals that they're happy to go route one into Michael Murphy, which is a different dynamic. Haven't seen much of it this year. Do you think is that something that we could see this weekend in terms of a slight curveball that Jimmy could throw at us, because they have had the 12 different scorers from play the last day out, so that running game isn't in question, that scoring potential from ever isn't in question. Might we see a different angle to how they could potentially attack, particularly early on this weekend, something that we haven't seen since probably 2012 with Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm sure McGuinness is mulling this over for the last, I don't know how long, but yeah, they have weapons. They can go long to Murphy inside. We haven't seen a whole lot of that this year. They kind of walk the ball into his hands most of the time and then let him kind of dictate how it's played. But their running power from the back is something that I have never seen before. It's absolutely awesome. And their scramble defence. So if they can turn you over in a scramble defence, their back to front is like nothing I've ever seen. They've just speed and pace everywhere. And they all seem to give the guy... They'll make the run, they'll make the overlap, they'll make the real hard cut inside, and they'll get it to the guy who's fresh. And that's a real team effort, like, you know, like we've been big enough Finbar Rorty all year, McCall all year, but they're the meanest defence as well when they have it. Like Owenbaugh Gallagher maybe doesn't get the plaudits that the other lads do. Ryan McHugh this year maybe not getting the plaudits that the other lads, but the work off the ball these guys are doing is absolutely phenomenal. They've probably the best midfielder in the country in Langan at the moment. So, yeah, I think McGuinness is going to really put pressure on this Kerry kick-out, and I think that's where they're going to get their joy, because, you know, when you win a kick-out, you're 6-on-6 inside. That's where you can really kind of pen teams in. You've seen what Kerry did to Armagh in the quarterfinals, how they penned them in for that maybe 12, 13-minute period and just blitzed them. But they've weapons everywhere. I don't see them going route one to Murphy and that alone. I see them going route one to Murphy early, putting Foley under pressure, because I think he's probably a weak link in that Kerry defence. But yeah, they've weapons everywhere. There's not one area of their play where you say they over rely on. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that midfield battle. And I think I hope McGuinness throws something a little bit left field in, do a 4 press up front, do a 4 in the middle, 4 at the back, and maybe push a keeper up. Do something we haven't seen before, and see what this Kerry keeper can do. See what Shane Ryan's like off the tee when he's under that savage pressure. Because we know what Patton can do on the other end. He can kick the ball over their whole defence. So I don't think Kerry have that weapon to press. They might be a little bit timid on that press because Patton can kick it so long. And if Thompson and Murphy can swap at 11 and they can kick the ball straight into Murphy's hands from a kick out, you know, what sort of a weapon is that? So for me, I think they've offensive weapons everywhere, but defensively, they're probably the best at the moment, I think.
They did gamble a bit, like Ethan Rafferty, his kickouts against Tyrone. I think he was all bar one. He got straight into an Armagh man's chest. But I was there at the Ulster final, and just like you mentioned, that 4-4-4 press where they took Patton up to the number 5 position. He ended up actually caught a kick out, contested quite a few because opposition will say, well, you're lumping on top of the goalkeeper and test him, see is he there as a mannequin or is he there to actually compete? And to be fair to him, he did compete. But yeah, you can be sure maybe quite similar to, it's so fresh in our minds, Liam Cahill and Tipperary and how well they were set up this weekend to have studied a team to the absolute last and to come up with a game plan that, you know, is capable of shutting down the supply to their danger area. There's no better man than Jimmy to be able to come up with that. But they are contrasting styles and how they want to play football. Donegal, if I've ever known, they're a running county, and that's fine, that suits them. And you said you can't but be impressed with them whenever you see them in full flow. But equally, in terms of the new rules, who I felt they were going to suit best, and even go back to the league, Kerry playing through the lanes that night against Armagh down in Tralee, how well they picked them off. They're also very good now at flooding the full forward line and creating one-on-ones where you have Breen, White, Brian Begley, these boys who are just looking for one-on-ones to step and then pop the ball off to you, similar to Donegal, to the fresh man coming on a loop and getting the shots off. There's just so much to be excited about it in terms of both teams will ask different questions in terms of how to tactically set up. But I think that's what's just making it such an exciting weekend to be getting ready for.
I suppose a big stat for me, and all the way through I was playing, if you won the tackle count, you more than likely won the game. And I think we drew one game in the whole time I was ever playing with Dublin that we didn't win the tackle count. So if we won the tackle count, we won the game. And I just see, like, Kerry can do it and they can do it for patches, but this Donegal team are ferocious, and that's what they live and breathe themselves on. I think if we can see that from them on Sunday, that's going to be a huge statistic by the end of the game.
No, that's brilliant, because everyone looks at the scores the Kerry are getting and that 14-15 minutes against Armagh and how talked up, but it's that tackling for me. That's what stood out, the energy, the work rate. At times this past number of years, you've seen a Kerry man getting beaten, knowing he's in pressure, and yet another defender would be standing watching his own man out in the wing where you need to leave, I need to leave you because that's the danger there. But you're seeing that from them now. They're knowing, my man's no danger, who can I help? And I think that's been a standout one. I think they need to do it for 70 minutes. You're spot on with that this weekend. But again, that's another aspect that I think the new rules has allowed us to see, and teams are all absolutely embracing. Like, you just simply have to, it's tough work. There's no point in saying otherwise. Like, it is hard work, and just the nerves and the nervous energy that comes with All-Ireland final. I'm sure you know more than most. You maybe feel like you're more tired than what you maybe are, but you just have to find that extra bit this weekend. It's the day where the whole country, the whole GA world is sitting looking on with envy on 30 players. But that's another part that I think is just going to be so interesting to see, the ferocity that both teams go after the ball.
All right, Aaron, so what's your predictions for Sunday, and how do you feel the game might go? In a sense, will it be this free scoring, running game from Donegal, getting the ball in early to Clifford, and maybe see loads of goal chances like we did against Tyrone? Or will it be a little bit more cagey and more tactical and slow the game down? What's your kind of thoughts on that?
My gut feeling initially would be, I think the first half will be played at a slower pace. I think there'll be cage. I think what Donegal will try to do is that defensive setup. I think they'll be resilient in that there. I think they'll bring huge energy to it, that they're trying to condense one side of the field and get out quick the other side whenever Kerry look to switch play. And I think whenever they're in possession, they look to kill the game a bit in terms of just get those runners to the opposite 21, inside the 21, and allow them that bit of composure around the middle third to try and work scores off, I suppose, their script, their hymn sheet. But I do think just the way the game is, it has to open up in the second half. I think it will open up, and I think once it does, Kerry, I've no doubt, they'll be ready, they'll be mentally prepared for that maybe slower game, that intensity Donegal will bring. But then maybe where Cork weren't prepared to flick that switch at the weekend in the hurling, I think Kerry will know a time will come in this game when the foot pass and the pockets of space for that early ball will come, and we need to be in the right positions for it, and we need to have the options off Dave, because David's going to get double teamed this weekend. Everton likes to go into the 13 corner to him, so that's Donegal's plotting and planning against that, but Kerry need to still be able to work the ball to those inside forwards and then have the options coming off it. So I don't think it's going to be a massive shootout in the first half, but I just think the nature of the game there at the moment, I think the second half is going to explode into life. And to me, it can go either way, but I have a wee sneaky feeling that I think Donegal tactically can play the game better on their terms, and based off that there, I think maybe a point or two in their favour for them to get across the line. But it's pretty much a 50-50.
I'd be of similar opinion, and I think if Kerry can kind of up their scoring average, as in their percentage from shots to scores, they could blitz Donegal. But I just think Donegal defensively are so strong, their transition is so strong, their weapons from their kickouts, they have a lot more options around the middle of the field. There's question marks about Kerry's middle of the field. Look, I know Joe O'Connor was brilliant last weekend, but I just have a sneaking suspicion that this Donegal team could wrap you up for 10 minutes and really hurt you. The scramble defence, we discussed it at length earlier on, and their running power is phenomenal from the back to front, and they seem to be able to make changes at the right times in games. Like they done it, poor Meath, like they done it against Meath last week, 2 weekends ago, and like McBurdy comes on, scores 3 points like that, 1, 2, 3, and they just swung the momentum straight back in their favour. It's like, do Kerry have that off the bench? We've seen Esplan come on and got a couple of points the last day, but do they have that many weapons from the bench? And I think where it's going to be won and lost is that impact coming on. Like McGee comes on around 50 minutes most of the time for Donegal and makes that middle third tick again. I think that'll be a great launch pad for them. Whether they can get their scoring average up and whether they can get goals, Kerry, that's probably the winning and the losing. They probably have slicker forwards, but I think where the advantage is for Donegal is, their goalkeeper, that defence, the running power and the middle third. I think that's probably where they're going to win and lose this game.